Welcome into the Wednesday episode of the David Hookstead Show. As always, happy to have you all here. We got some fun topics. Right away from the jump, I want to jump in Bill Maher. Bill Maher appeared on Joe Rogan's podcast, and he said some very interesting things about common sense and about how the Democratic Party has shifted away from him. He has not shifted to the right, which is something I think anyone who watches Bill Maher knows and what I've said for a long time. I'm going to read you his quote here because it's pretty good, and I want to make sure we get it right. And this is what he said in part when talking about common sense in politics and how the Democratic Party has strayed away from it. We're both seen as people who are commonsensical, and that is what there's hunger for. I think in America, more than anything, is common sense, away from the extremes. When people say to me, don't you think you've gotten more conservative? No, I haven't. The left has gotten goofier. So I seem more conservative maybe, but it's not me who's changed. I'm always saying to the Democrats, just don't be the party of no common sense. And you will be surprised with all the amazing success you will have as opposed to what's going to happen, which is they're going to get their asses kicked in November. Then he adds, kind of talking about late night hosts, he said, now you couldn't survive apparently on late night television unless you were political. Unless the audience knows exactly, and I would put Saturday Night Live in this too, and I think Elon Musk took them to task. He said it doesn't seem like a show that's about comedy more so much as it is about declaring some woke doctrine. Look, I agree 100% with Bill Maher. Anyone who watches this knows I'm a Bill Maher fan. Anyone who reads some of my writing knows I'm a Bill Maher fan. I think Bill Maher is outstanding, and he is a refreshing voice of reason from the left. And he's a perfect example of sitting down and talking to someone you might disagree with. Bill Maher invites people from all over the political spectrum onto his show. Far right, far left, moderate Democrats, moderate Republicans, libertarians. There's no part of the political spectrum Bill Maher is afraid to bring onto his show. And unfortunately in this country, what's happened is we've become so fractured that if anyone disagrees with you, whether there's people like this on both sides of the aisle for sure, you just shut down. You don't want to engage. You want to keep them far away. You don't want anything to do with them. And the reality of this is, and this is probably going to piss some people off, conservatives that I know are way more open-minded when it comes to dealing with viewpoints they disagree with. And what I mean by that is you will often find conservatives who either don't care what someone else's viewpoint is or is willing to engage in a debate with them. Probably you see more of the first half of that because I think a lot of conservatives, certainly myself included, we don't really care what other people do. We don't. We want to live our lives, we want to be left alone, and we want to do what we want to do. You know, it wasn't conservatives running around screaming about masks, right? People were wearing masks or they weren't wearing masks, they were doing their own business, they were keeping themselves. On the left, unfortunately, what we've seen and what Bill Maher is essentially calling out here is if you disagree with someone on the other side at all on anything, they're a terrible person. We've dehumanized our political opponents. We've dehumanized those we disagree with. And there's countless examples. I mean, again, let's go to the mask stuff with COVID. How many people did you see running around screaming at people to put their masks on, screaming at people to follow the rules, to listen to Fauci? You didn't see conservatives running around telling people what to do. They just kept to themselves. They just want to be left alone. We have to get back to a place in America where it's okay to disagree and have fun with each other. One of the things I really pride myself on is I do have friends all over the political spectrum. I enjoy hanging out with liberal people. I enjoy hanging out with conservative people. We talk about different things. We do different things. If you live in a little echo chamber and you live in your own little world and you have no opposing viewpoints and you have a safe space and offensive viewpoints aren't allowed in or anything that might shatter your worldview isn't allowed in, you're going to grow up to frankly be a weak, cowardly person because you're not ever going to have to confront views you don't like. And the best way to counter argue against a view you don't like is to regularly come up against it. It's like playing sports. If you never see a defense and then you face a certain kind of defense for the first time and you don't know what's coming, they're going to eat you up. They're going to dominate you on the field. But if you see a defense, you study it, you know what's coming, you get used to playing against it. Now you know where the weaknesses in the defense are. Now you know what you can take from the defense. Same thing when it comes to debating, arguing, discussions. If you're constantly challenged to see different viewpoints, you're constantly going to have to be sharper on your own game to refute the false information or the points you disagree with. If you live in your little safe world, being cradled and stuff like that and coddled, you're never going to do that. And then you're not going to have any idea how to argue with people or how to push your point forward, how to counter-argue their points. It's quite frankly appalling to me that this is now where we're at in America. It's appalling to me that if we disagree with someone, we just shut down. We try to ruin their lives. We try to cancel them. I mean, what happened to this country? What happened to the days of you just get a few beers, you hash it out, you have some fun, and then you move on to the next thing? You know, I often use sports as an example for it shouldn't matter who your friends are in terms of their political alignment, because when you're out there cheering, when I'm cheering for the Badgers, there's obviously people in that stadium all over the place. Doesn't matter. We're all cheering for the same thing. When we see a war hero come home, we see a war hero who wins the Medal of Honor, we're all supporting them. Doesn't matter what your political views are. You support it because it's something that should unite us. And unfortunately, we've taken away the common ground, and we've just allowed this country to become fractured down political lines. And it's frankly disgusting and appalling. And we need more people like Bill Maher. You need more people like Joe Rogan. And you need more people willing to stand up to this nonsense. So I like Bill Maher. I think Bill Maher is a good dude. I completely support him in this aspect. And don't be afraid to grab a beer with someone you might disagree with. You might find out that you have more in common, which we all have more in common than we have apart, and you might like it. So we need to get back to that in America instead of moving more towards our own corners, I would say. All right, next. Tom Brady, obviously he unretired, came back to the Buccaneers, not the Patriots, obviously. And Michael Irvin, we all know who Michael Irvin is, the former Cowboys receiver. He said he thought that Brady came back because he didn't like being bossed around. I'm going to read you his quote here. It's pretty funny. I tell people all the time, when you're at the top of the mountain, when you're Tom Brady in the NFL, you're at the top of the mountain. You've won 7 Super Bowls. You got more rings. You're the boss where you go on, then you decide, I think I'm going to retire. I think I'm going to retire. And you go home and you have this idea in your head. It's just a figmentation. I think he fucked that up. Of your imagination, what retirement is. And then you get home and you learn that you're no longer the boss, but you're being bossed around home, telling you what to do. You're like, wait a minute, I just want to sit here and relax. No, you need to do this. Can you get this done? And you say, whoa, wait a minute. Maybe this is not what I want to do right now. I actually had a very similar theory when Brady first announced he was coming back. I told someone, he probably went to one parent-teachers conference and decided that shit wasn't for him. He's supposed to be out here slinging football. He's supposed to be out there slinging touchdown passes. He's not supposed to be at parent-teacher conferences. That's not what Brady's all about. That's not what NFL stars are about. So he's like, you know what? I still feel good. Body feels good. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to keep playing because I damn sure don't want to sit and do this boring stuff. And that's more or less why Brady decided to come out of retirement. I don't blame him, because if I went from playing football every single day to now I'm just lounging around at home, I don't really know what I'm doing. I don't particularly have a good sense of what the purpose to this is. I don't want to be getting nagged all day. I don't want to, the kids constantly need stuff. The wife constantly needs stuff. It's like, no, I just go back and play football on Sundays, make 25 mil and not have to deal with any of this. I totally understand it. I totally get it. I don't know if I'd make the same decision, but I definitely am not going to knock him for that decision. Finally, Baker Mayfield, according to the Drinkin' Bros podcast. If you're not watching the Drinkin' Bros podcast, you really should. I discovered it a few weeks ago. I had never heard of it before. I've been listening to it, I think, almost every day since. It is a hell of a podcast. But according to one of the hosts of the Drinkin' Bros podcast, Baker Mayfield is going to be traded to the Atlanta Falcons for either a second or a third round pick. That's what the teams are debating right now. And this really just goes to show what a fall from grace Baker Mayfield has had in the NFL. This guy went from being the first overall pick, Heisman winner at Oklahoma, to maybe being traded for as little as a third-round pick. Now, third-round pick's not bad. Third-round picks, you can get a solid guy who's maybe a starter as a second or third-year player in the league with a third-round pick. But most first overall picks don't drop that much. Baker Mayfield's got a whole lot of attitude and not much talent, and that's a dangerous recipe in pro sports, because if your talents offset your issues, you'll always have a job. Problem for Baker Mayfield is he's marginally talented, he's not overly athletic, he's short, and he's got a ton of drama that comes with him. So what team is going to want to take him? I think he's due about $18.5 million this year. That's not terrible for a one-year hit. But the other thing is the Falcons have Marcus Mariota. Are we confident for sure in an open QB competition that Mayfield can beat out Mariota? I'm not confident of that at all. I'm not confident of that at all. I mean, we've seen Mayfield play. He ain't nothing special. He's nothing special at all. He's a very mediocre fringe starter in the NFL. If the Browns had a good start of these past few years, now they have one in Deshaun Watson, they could have made a run at the Super Bowl. But instead, Mayfield, constant trauma, constant issues. If he does go to the Falcons, I'll be interested to see if they give Mariota a chance to beat him out. Anyways, that's all we have for the Wednesday episode of the David Hookstead Show. Make sure to check back Thursday for the last one of the week.